I'm Madeline, 37 years old, a literature teacher at a high school in the suburbs of Michigan. I used to believe I was strong enough to fix a broken marriage, until the cold towel pressed against my swollen cheek did nothing but deepen the chill inside me. The bruise beneath my left eye stood as a silent declaration that this time he didn't even bother to hide it. I was still wearing the pale floral silk dress from the day before, wrinkled and damp at the wrist where I'd wiped the blood quickly with a tissue in the bathroom. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Tears only made the questions in my head echo louder, with nowhere to go. The front door swung open. No knock, no warning. I heard the rustling of paper bags and the familiar footsteps of my mother. She always left her rubber slippers on the porch when she came over. My father followed, the scent of his old aftershave lingering faintly in the air. I turned my head just enough for them to see my face. My mother froze mid-step, still holding a bag of carrots and a tin of ginger cookies she brought along. Her eyes flicked past me in less than a second, landing instead on the empty vase on the shelf. Not a word, not a sigh. My father looked directly at me, or more precisely, at the bruise blooming purple along my cheekbone. He frowned, not in concern, but as if calculating whether I had made a bigger deal than necessary. After a few seconds of silence, he asked, "Did you make dinner yet?" I stayed silent. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard. I stared into his eyes, searching for anything, a flicker of doubt, a hint of shame, or simply a trace of human emotion. There was nothing. From the hallway, I heard the sound of Jack's slippers, my husband, the one who had grabbed me just under 2 hours ago. He stepped out, shirtless, holding a half-empty beer can, eyes disturbingly alert. "Well, your polite little family's here." Jack's words landed like cold water in a room already frozen over. He didn't pretend. He didn't hide, his voice calm, like he was commenting on the weather. My father nodded stiffly at him and walked into the kitchen. My mother squeezed past me, placed the grocery bag on the counter, and began unpacking containers, her hands trembling slightly but moving with robotic precision. No one asked if I was okay. No one said anything like, "What happened, Madeline?" Jack sank back into the couch, turned on the TV. A replayed football game filled the house with artificial noise. I stood still in the middle of the room, fingers clutching the now soaked cold towel. 12 minutes later, my parents left, saying they had just dropped by for a bit. The door closed so gently, I wasn't sure if it was a goodbye or just a quiet retreat. What remained in me was nothing but emptiness, not a single word, not one honest glance. Just indifference, dressed up in polite appearances. It was in that moment I understood. They wouldn't take my side. They didn't need to know what had happened as long as it didn't inconvenience them. They chose comfort over truth, and I, the well-raised daughter, was expected to keep quiet and behave. But the truth was, I was tired of living like a ghost in my own life. Jack and I got married when I was 33. Back then, I believed I'd found a grown, kind, and steady man, the kind of person who could bring peace after a restless youth. Jack worked in real estate, often leaving early and coming home late, always polite and measured in front of others. When he proposed, I didn't hesitate for long. We had a small wedding by Lake Muskegon under maple trees in late autumn. Everyone said I was lucky. At the time, I thought so too. The odd things started with little details. The first time was when Jack frowned at the dress I wore to a school reunion. "It's too tight," he said, "not really appropriate for a teacher." I laughed, thinking he was joking. But the next morning, the dress was gone. He said he'd accidentally mixed it in with a donation bag. Then came the bank account. Shortly after our wedding, Jack suggested we combine our finances. "It'll be easier to manage," he said. "You're detail-oriented, but I have investment experience." I trusted him, just like a wife is supposed to. Over time, I stopped knowing how much money I had. Every time I asked, he had an excuse: insurance payments, stock purchases, or simply, "let me handle it." I began to feel like I was living in a house ruled by invisible laws. Close friends slowly disappeared. Jack never forbade me from seeing them, but he always found a way to make me feel guilty whenever I made plans without him. "You're leaving me to eat dinner alone after we haven't seen each other all day," he would say with a soft smile and those fake sad eyes. I stopped going to gatherings, quit my book club, even deleted my social media accounts. Whenever I pushed back, Jack never raised his voice. He was oddly gentle. "I know you didn't mean to hurt me," he'd say, "but I felt disrespected." Or, "We're a team, aren't we?" Eventually, words weren't enough anymore. One winter afternoon, I burned the pot roast. It wasn't serious, but Jack threw the entire plate onto the floor. A shard of ceramic flew up and cut my ankle. He apologized right away, bandaged the wound carefully, then sent a huge bouquet to my school the next morning. The card read, "Sorry, I overreacted. I love you more than my own breath." My coworkers swooned. I smiled, but my chest felt hollow. It kept happening, sometimes because I forgot to buy orange juice, sometimes because I took too long replying to a friend's text. Each time came with gifts, flowers, romantic dinners, and each time I asked myself, was it my fault? I used to think I was smart, independent, but if you live long enough in a house where every mistake is blamed on you, you begin to question even your own thoughts. I once stood in front of the mirror at midnight, looking at myself, unsure of what was real. Was the red mark on my arm from bumping into a door, or because he grabbed too hard? Did I fall in the kitchen, or did he shove me when he got angry? That's when I started keeping a journal, not to vent, but to remember. Dates, times, events, phrases, facial expressions. I saved it all on a small USB drive, password protected and labeled lesson materials, just in case it was ever found. I didn't tell anyone, not then. I still believed I could fix Jack, that if I loved him the right way, things would change. My mother used to say, "Men, sometimes you just have to let them be. If a woman's not soft enough, the marriage won't last." She told me that when I called to say I was exhausted after Jack scolded me all weekend for forgetting to wash his shoes. That's when I realized I had probably learned love the wrong way, from the very house I grew up in. The more I wrote, the clearer it became. I wasn't overreacting. I was living through a string of behaviors dressed up as affection. And they weren't fading over time, they were sharpening, becoming more dangerous. I didn't dare confront them, but I couldn't ignore them anymore either. I was waiting for one thing, a sign, a moment that would say, "It's time to leave," and not look back. And that moment came, unexpectedly, on a Wednesday afternoon, just 1 hour after Jack sent a message that read, "We're going to talk when I get home, and I hope you know better than to make me raise my voice again." I read that line at least 10 times. Then I unlocked the wooden cabinet in the study. For the first time, I opened the folder labeled "Backup, just in case." That night, a light rain began to fall. The street lamp outside cast streaks of light through the living room window, blurry like the thoughts swirling in my head. I sat motionless on the couch, fingers wrapped tightly around the small USB hidden in my palm. Jack's message still glowed on my phone screen, each word like a warning. "We're going to talk when I get home, and I hope you know better than to make me raise my voice again." I knew exactly what Jack meant by talk. No yelling, no hitting, but enough to make you curl up in the bathroom, turn on the water full blast, and drown in your own guilt. I opened my contacts. My fingers scrolled past names that used to feel like home, but had since vanished from my life like they'd never existed, until I reached one I'd nearly forgotten. Vanessa Miles, a college classmate, sociology major, who used to work for a women's advocacy group in Indianapolis. I couldn't remember why we lost touch. Maybe I'd pulled away, maybe Jack didn't like her. Vanessa was the type who couldn't be manipulated easily. I opened the message box and typed, "Do you still remember me?" Then deleted it. I typed again, "I need help. Don't ask anything now. Are you still with the support group?" The message was sent at 9:43 p.m. Less than 2 minutes later, the typing dots appeared. Then came the reply. Still here. And you're not the first I've seen like this. Are you ready? I sat there, stunned. No judgment, no need to explain. Just one question that cut straight to the core. For the first time in months, I felt like someone actually saw me. I typed slowly. Maybe not tonight, but I won't delay anymore. Vanessa replied. Then start with the smallest step. Do you have backup? I opened the drawer, pulled out a thin folder I'd hidden well. Printed emails from the bank, strange transfer records, screenshots of voice messages, even a medical note from the ER visit I claimed was a fall down the stairs. I snapped pictures of every page, sending them to her through a secure app she had recommended. Got everything, she messaged. For now, don't say anything to anyone, and don't react if Jack suspects something. We need a few more days to build a legal frame. I typed back. I don't know how to even begin with my parents. The typing dots hovered for a long time before her reply came. Not everyone was taught that love doesn't mean staying silent through violence, but you don't need their belief to survive. I read that line over 10 times. Near midnight, I stood and walked to the kitchen, turning on the stove to boil water for tea. The house was quiet. Jack wasn't home yet. On the dining table sat a fabric pouch containing documents Vanessa had sent me. A checklist of what to do in case I needed to leave immediately. Personal IDs. A separate account in your name. Legal guardian or witness. Temporary safe address. 3-month financial history. Any recordings stored outside his reach. I taped the checklist to the back of a cabinet door Jack never touched. Around 1 a.m., headlights swept across the window. Jack was home. I gathered the folder and tucked it deep into the hidden compartment under the drawer. When he entered, the air filled with the scent of beer and cologne. You're still up? He asked, voice flat. I nodded, steadying my breath. I'll be late tomorrow. Evening meeting, he continued, not waiting for a response. Oh, and stop using my card. I saw some strange transactions. I smiled, saying nothing about the new visa I'd opened last week under Vanessa's guidance. Jack didn't touch me that night. He passed out the moment his head hit the pillow. But I didn't sleep. I sat in the chair, staring out the window. The rain had long stopped. In the dim glow of the street lamp, I saw my own reflection, small, but for the first time in ages, not blurry. I picked up my phone and texted Vanessa, I think it's time. She replied with only one line. 7 a.m. tomorrow. I emailed you the location. Bring everything. Leave nothing behind. I put the phone down. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of hearing the front door lock click shut from the inside. I was ready, not to fight, but to escape the place where silence had been killing me a little more each day. I left the house at 6 a.m., carrying a small backpack and a thin folder I had hidden in an old shoebox under the bed. Jack was still asleep. His heavy breathing and the familiar sound of teeth grinding followed me all the way to the front door. Vanessa was waiting in the parking lot of a suburban coffee shop 10 miles from my house. No hugs, no small talk. She just opened the car door and handed me a hot latte. We've got about 3 days, she said, before Jack gets suspicious and starts checking everything. We need to stay ahead. I nodded. It was the first time I saw my reflection in the rearview mirror without flinching. We arrived at the office of Carla Romero, an attorney who specializes in domestic and financial abuse cases. Carla was in her early 40s, petite, but her voice was razor sharp. After scanning the initial evidence, she said only one thing. You've done what hundreds of women can't, gathered the truth before it gets twisted. Within 2 hours, I signed for an emergency protection order, gave temporary legal authority to manage our joint bank accounts, and agreed to forward the file to the district attorney if there were any signs of retaliation from Jack. Carla guided me to open a new bank account at a small branch in the suburbs, outside Jack's usual banking network. Over the past 3 weeks, I had been quietly transferring small amounts from the secondary card to a digital wallet, then into that backup account. The total, over $4,000. enough for 2 months' rent, legal fees, and an emergency cushion. The temporary apartment is under the name Erin Moore, Vanessa said, handing me a pre-signed lease for an older building in Benton Harbor, about 30 miles from where I lived. The landlord's one of ours. It's on the 3rd floor with a back stairway to the parking lot. Wi-Fi's already set up. The password is start again. I pressed my lips together. Not out of fear, but because, for the first time, the idea of getting out didn't feel like a fantasy anymore. That evening, I returned home looking as normal as ever. Jack was in the living room, eyes glued to the TV, beer in hand. "Where have you been all day?" he asked, voice even, like any wrong answer might detonate the room. "End-of-year seminar at school. I told the department head," I replied, looking him straight in the eye. Jack grunted and turned back to his sports channel. I walked toward the kitchen, where his second beer was already waiting. I didn't change anything, no anger, no rush. Everything went on as usual, except now. Every move I made was calculated. From my bag, I pulled out a thick, black envelope with no name. Inside were copies of medical records, photos of bruises, an audio recording of an argument, printed emails Jack sent from his secret account filled with threats and control tactics, and the filed protection order. I placed the envelope on the small wooden table next to the armchair he always sat in, right beside his third cold beer. No one said a word. There was no loud noise, but my hand trembled slightly as I let go. Not from fear, but because I knew tomorrow nothing would ever go back to the way it was. I went to the bedroom and pulled a small suitcase from the closet, carefully packing only the essentials: 2 changes of clothes, sneakers, a tablet, my journal, and the USB drive, the one that held every step I'd recorded for the past 6 months. I left everything else. I wasn't taking any part of a past distorted by apologies. As I zipped the suitcase shut, my phone buzzed. Vanessa had messaged. 6:30 a.m. tomorrow. Car will arrive. Don't bring much. And remember, don't let emotion lead. Walk out like you've already been gone. I set the phone down and stood still for a moment in the room that used to feel like peace, then became the place I learned to shrink in silence at every heavy footstep. I didn't close the door. I left it open, as a farewell that didn't need words. When I returned to the living room, Jack had passed out in the chair, head slumped to one side, beer still in hand. I stared at him longer than usual, not out of regret, but because I needed to remember that face. The man who once said he loved me, then used that love as a chain. I lit a small candle on the dining table, the only thing I ever bought just because I liked it, not because he chose it. The soft glow crept quietly into every shadow. That night, I slept, without dreams, and for the first time in 3 years, I set an alarm not to go to work, but to start my life over. I woke up at 5:52 a.m., 6 minutes before the alarm was set to go off. Not from anxiety, my body had simply grown used to bracing for impact. But today, I wasn't bracing, I was preparing. I put on a white blouse and simple jeans, tied my hair back. Not to look good, just to move easily. My phone was fully charged, USB drive clipped to my keychain. I pulled a tiny camera from the drawer, already clipped to the inside button of my bra. Vanessa had given it to me last week. In case things go south. It auto-records and uploads when jolted, she said. Jack was still asleep, but I knew his routine well. Around 6:20, he'd groggily get up to use the bathroom. Around then, if anything unexpected happened, I needed to be ready. I walked into the living room and opened the front door, pretending to check the mailbox. A gray SUV was parked 2 houses down. Vanessa was inside. She didn't look at me, just lowered the window and gave a small nod. Everything was on time. I went back into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. Just as I set it down, I heard heavy footsteps behind me. What the hell is this? Jack's voice came sharp, wide awake. I turned. In his hand was the black envelope I'd left out last night, torn open. The papers were crumpled, a few photos scattered on the floor, and the protective order stood out, marked with a red seal at the top. "What are you doing, Madeline?" I didn't answer. I just looked at him, straight in the eye. "You think this paperwork crap is gonna outsmart me?" He stepped forward, faster than I'd expected. His hand clamped around my wrist, gripping so hard his fingernails dug into my skin. "You think you're just gonna walk away that easy?" I didn't pull away. I looked him dead in the eye and said, slowly, "You're being recorded." Jack froze. I tilted slightly, letting him see the tiny green light blinking behind my collar, where the mini camera was now flashing. "And if you shake me one more time, the video uploads automatically to 3 separate places, including Carla's inbox, the local women's protection group, and the Benton Harbor police chief." He dropped my arm like it had electrocuted him. "You're setting me up," he said, voice starting to crack. "No, Jack, I'm protecting myself. People like to say set up when they're afraid their real face is about to show." He backed away, glancing at the scattered documents on the floor, then looking back at me. The rage was still there, but now it mixed with confusion and shame. I picked up my phone, opened the remote live stream app Vanessa had set up. One tap and the whole room would broadcast directly to Woman Shield Legal Watch, where someone was always on duty. "You trying to humiliate me? Drag me through the mud?" I didn't answer. I walked to the dining table, calmly picked up each paper, neatly stacking them. I never took my eyes off him. Jack swiped his arm across the table, knocking over the water glass. It splashed across my shirt, but I didn't blink. "You want that footage sitting on the desk of Greystone Realty's director." That name stopped him cold. The company he always bragged about, his so-called second family, the one that trusted him without question. You wouldn't..." I nodded, very slowly. "I sent the draft to their legal team last night. If you touch me again, they'll receive the full version." In that moment, I saw Jack truly disoriented for the first time, not because of me, but because he'd lost control. "You have no right to walk out of here with this pile of lies," he shouted, but his voice was fading. I stepped forward, face to face. "I have the right to live, not just exist, beside someone who makes me record every time I'm insulted." Outside, I heard the engine turn on. Vanessa had exited the SUV and was standing near the door. She didn't come in, just stood there, phone in hand, filming through the narrow opening. I turned back to Jack. "And if you're wondering where the recording from earlier went, it was sent out 3 minutes before you laid a hand on me." That shut him down completely. I grabbed my suitcase and walked past him. Not fast, not slow. When my hand touched the doorknob, Jack didn't try to stop me. He just stood there, face pale, lips pressed tight, like a man waking from a long, strange dream. I stepped outside, where Vanessa was waiting. She didn't say a word, just opened the trunk. I placed my suitcase inside and closed it. Behind me, the door shut, not by Jack, but by me. For the first time, I was the one closing everything behind me. Vanessa turned and said softly, "You just took your life back, Madeline." I let out a long breath. I didn't feel fear waiting for me ahead, only emptiness, and something that felt a lot like freedom. I thought that once I walked out of that house, cut ties with Jack, filed the paperwork, and submitted the evidence, justice would follow its course. I thought that if I had the truth, the system would side with me. I was wrong. 3 days after filing for a restraining order and submitting evidence to the Benton Harbor Police Department, I got a call from an administrative clerk. Her voice was mechanical, almost cold. "We've received your file, ma'am. However, the application is still pending further verification. The police chief wants to ensure there's no personal bias in this matter." I understood immediately. Jack had once been a property consultant for the city, hosted fundraisers with local officials. He was well connected. And in small towns like this, connections often outweighed the truth. I paused a few seconds, then asked directly, "So I have to wait until he seriously injures me before I get protection?" She didn't answer, just said quietly, "We'll be in touch." I hung up, hands trembling with rage. Vanessa sat across from me in the tiny rental apartment with nothing but an old sofa and wobbly dining table. She didn't ask questions, just handed me a glass of water. "They're stalling to protect their own," she said. "So we'll do what they fear most, tell the world." Vanessa published a blog post on her personal site. "The perfect mask, when abusers know how to live two lives." She didn't name Jack, but included photos of the bruises on my shoulder, a hospital report listing blunt force soft tissue injury, and an audio clip of Jack's voice from midnight. "If you tell anyone about this, I'll make you regret ever opening your mouth." She posted it at 10 in the morning. By 3 p.m., it had been shared over 1,000 times. A women's rights organization in Chicago reposted it on their main page. A prominent civil rights attorney who had won a case against Michigan State Police left a comment. "I'd like to speak with this survivor. Can someone help me connect?" That afternoon, as I was making tea in the kitchen, my phone buzzed, an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hi, this is Morgan Lane, investigative reporter with Civic Dispatch, an independent news channel. We read this morning's post. We'd like to interview you, if you're open to it." I nearly dropped the cup. I'd thought about speaking up, but never imagined my voice would reach a major news outlet. Morgan clarified. They would keep my location private, use no real names unless I consented, and I would review the full draft before they published anything. I said yes, partly because I knew Jack wouldn't stop unless a light bright enough was cast on the darkness he thrived in. The interview was filmed in a co-working space in South Haven, arranged by Vanessa. I sat across from Morgan in a quiet room with soft lighting, no booming mics or invasive cameras, just a conversation. "What made you decide to stop staying silent?" Morgan asked, her voice calm and warm. I looked at the camera and for the first time answered, not in defense, but to hear myself speak the truth. I realized that if I didn't speak up, all the evidence I worked so hard to collect would sit in an envelope, forgotten. And if there's someone out there like me who thinks they have to suffer in silence, I want them to know they can start by saying, "I'm not okay." And that's not wrong. Morgan left with a promise to send me the full draft. She didn't rush, didn't push me to recount painful details. She just listened. That evening, I got her email. The subject line of the article draft read, "When justice turns away, the community speaks up." I read every line and cried. Not for the past, but because, for the first time, someone had told my story without turning me into a fragile victim. I was a survivor, a woman who chose not to back down. And I knew Jack would read it too, but this time he couldn't edit it, he couldn't erase it, he couldn't control how people saw me anymore. He could hold on to a house, a reputation, a seat on the business council, but he no longer held my silence. And that was the only power he'd ever truly feared losing. The first version of the interview was officially published on Civic Dispatch the following Monday. Within just 24 hours, the article became one of the top 5 most shared topics across Michigan. I didn't expect it to spread that fast, but what surprised me more was that I was no longer the only name in this fight. Just 2 days later, Vanessa received a message from a woman named Jillian Foster, age 42, who had worked as an accountant at the same real estate company as Jack. She sent an audio recording of meetings where Jack emotionally cornered her, manipulating her performance review to force her into taking the fall for his mistakes with major clients. Then came Amber Wells, age 29, who dated Jack before me. She privately messaged Morgan, sharing how Jack had controlled her social media accounts, demanded access to private messages, and pressured her to quit her job because he didn't like his girlfriend talking to strangers. Next was Charlotte D., a single mom living about an hour from me. She sent Vanessa photos of old bruises and a hospital bill from 2018. Listed as her emergency contact was close friend, Jack. These women didn't know each other. They had no ties except one. They each once believed Jack was the only person who truly understood them. I sat at the desk in my rented apartment, printing out each of their statements, highlighting details. My hands no longer shook. Each account revealed a piece of a bigger picture I'd never seen before. Jack wasn't just a bad husband. He was a calculated manipulator, someone who knew exactly how to work the system and stayed just beyond its reach. Carla, my attorney, immediately opened a new case file. She compiled all witness evidence and filed a federal civil suit for prolonged systematic abuse. She also requested an expanded restraining order, not just for me, but for all three women. The day before the preliminary hearing, I got a text from my mother. Madeline, don't make this a big deal. People are talking. Your father hasn't slept all week. I stared at that message, rereading it 3 times. Not once did she ask if I was okay. No apology for turning away when she saw the bruises on my face. Only shame. About gossip, about appearances. I didn't reply. On the morning of the hearing, I wore a charcoal gray blazer, hair tied back. Vanessa walked beside me. Jillian, Amber, and Charlotte were all there. We sat in a row outside the courtroom, silent, but our glances said it all. No one was alone anymore. On the other side, Jack arrived alone. No private lawyer, no family. He saw me, paused for a second, then hurried past as if I were a stranger. His eyes were hollow, like someone clinging to a role long after the curtain had fallen. Inside the courtroom, Judge Monroe, a woman in her early 50s with an icy stare, read the case file without blinking. She said one sentence I'll never forget. "We are not here to see who cries harder or who speaks better. We are here to see who holds the truth." Every bank statement, photo, recording, and testimony was submitted. Carla presented the facts, not with drama, not with flair, just a logical sequence of truths long buried beneath silence. Judge Monroe didn't issue a full ruling that day. She requested time to review all materials. But she did grant a temporary emergency restraining order, effective for 30 days and renewable if needed. As we exited the courthouse, a light rain began to fall. Vanessa offered me an umbrella, but I didn't open it. I wanted to feel every drop, like rinsing away the years I had stayed quiet. Amber walked up beside me and gently squeezed my hand. "Thank you," she said, "for saying what I've held in for 6 years." I looked at her. In their eyes, I saw myself, many versions of me, at different points in fear. And now, together, we stood. I moved into my new apartment on a Sunday morning in mid-March. It was a second-floor unit in an old building in Edgewater, just off Lake Michigan. The walls were faded, the wood floor creaked with every step, and the living room window overlooked a small parking lot. But to me, it was the first space I truly owned. Not shared, not borrowed, not shadowed by a man's breath in the kitchen. Greeted by a pure voice, tenants in the same apartment, only troubled and late-rent woman envy, I bought exactly 4 items to start over: a second-hand oak desk, a silver kettle, a reading lamp, and a single white candle in a glass jar by the window. Vanessa was the first to visit. She sat cross-legged on the floor, opened a box of hot pizza, and asked like we were freshmen starting college. "So, how does it feel?" I looked around and smiled gently, like I just signed a peace treaty with myself. I started teaching again at a small community center near Belmont. Not high-paying, not my old school, but the students were mostly older women wanting to learn writing skills or simply have someone to listen. In each class, I taught journaling using a method I called recording truth as a witness. I told them that sometimes writing down what you've been through is how you hold on to the courage you thought you'd lost. 2 weeks after the interview was published, I received a handwritten letter. No return address, just a folded sheet, slanted handwriting in delicate strokes. "I don't know you, but I read your story. I'm still here. I haven't gotten out. But every night I look up at the second-floor window with the white candle, and I believe I can step out too. Thank you for not staying silent." I placed that letter into a black leather notebook, the same one where I once scribbled down every time Jack shouted, sketched the shape of bruises, and wrote, "If I disappear, who will believe it wasn't an accident?" Now I write different things. Every Friday night, I host a small gathering at St. Eloise Church, not religious. We call it Quiet Fridays. People can speak or not, no circles, no pressure. No recordings, no photos. We sit, drink chamomile tea, light candles, and read pieces of our writing. Vanessa always brings homemade cookies. Amber and Charlotte show up sometimes. One of the attendees is Lila, age 58, who lived with a financially controlling husband for 30 years. One evening, after everyone had left, she walked up to me, took my hand, and said, "If I had met you earlier, I might have left at 40. But better late than never, right?" I nodded, no more words needed. Every night before bed, I still light the white candle by the window. Not for me. I don't need it to find my way anymore. But for someone out there, curled in the dark corner of a familiar kitchen or a locked bedroom. I light it as a signal. Someone survived. And that person is no longer silent. One early April evening, as I was shelving books in the living room, the doorbell rang. It was Morgan, the journalist who interviewed me. In her hand was a small book, plain white cover, black text. The Weight of Silence, Stories No Longer Forgotten. I flipped to the first page and saw my name, alongside Jillian, Amber, Charlotte, and 8 others. "We decided to publish," Morgan said. "All profits will go to a legal aid fund for victims who can't afford their own attorneys. Do you want your name listed?" I sat down, fingers resting on the cover. I didn't need fame, but if my name, my story, my presence could open a door for someone else, then why not? I nodded. I don't need to stand out. I just want them to know. Someone once believed no one would ever believe her, and she's still here, still living, and living honestly. That night, I opened the window. A cool breeze swept in from the lake, carrying the scent of budding maple trees. The white candle still burned, glowing in the glass, a small light that never goes out. I looked at it and whispered a sentence meant for no one else. Today I chose myself, and maybe tomorrow someone else will too. Madeline's story is a powerful reminder that silence is not safety, it can be a shackle. When women dare to rise and name the truth, they not only save themselves, but light the way for others. Justice may come late, but honest voices, clear evidence, and quiet determination can shake even the most indifferent systems. In real life, every voice is a spark, and enough sparks can ignite change. What do you think about Madeline's journey? What would you do in her place? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt stories about family, resilience, and reclaiming your voice.